All right, welcome back to MVGA Podcast. Here at Make Veterans Great Again, our mission is to reach out to fellow brothers and sisters to conquer our mental health together. Just a reminder, you are not alone. Today I'd like to introduce retired Army Chief Warrant Officer 2, Brady Busby, running for Arizona Congress. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And if I mispronounced your name, I apologize.
Sorry, it's Busby, like the bee.
I feel like I kind of slurred it a little bit, so you couldn't tell. You just knew I slurred. Well, thank you for being here. I can't wait to get this conversation started, so let's just dive right in.
Okay.
How was your childhood? What was your upbringing like?
My upbringing, I was born in Texas, Tyler, Texas. My dad built construction. He was a home builder at the time in Tyler, Texas, and then we moved to Arizona when I was a kid, about 3 years old. Raised in Woodruff, Arizona, and then Holbrook after that. Went to a one-room schoolhouse in Woodruff. He had the teacher with the ruler that would slap your hand and everything. So, yeah, that was interesting. Then we went to Holbrook, about elementary school, and we were on the poor side.
Okay.
A lot of kids. Didn't really have a lot, but we were a good unit, you know. We moved from Holbrook when I was in 8th grade to Mesa, Arizona. And that's where I stayed until I graduated high school and went into the military out of Phoenix. And I've been gone for 20 plus years, and now I'm back 100 miles away from where I was raised and running for Congress in District 2.
Yeah, and a completely different environment from where you were raised.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I have a question about your schooling. Do you feel like that affects you to this day? Or how do you feel about that schooling style?
I think I learned respect at an early age.
Okay.
Things like that. But my schooling, I didn't really like school.
Right.
I was smart enough to pass all my classes and all the tests, but I didn't really pay attention much.
Right.
I just wasn't really challenged. But after I was in the Army and I had to go through college later on in life, so that really helped me out a lot.
Okay. But I was just curious as getting hit with the ruler. Do you feel like that has any lasting imprint on you?
Well, I was raised by parents that agreed with punishment.
Okay.
Punishment fit the crime, though. I mean, if I got in a fight at school, especially if I lost or something, I'd get beat when I got home.
Yeah, so you can take 2 L's that day.
Yeah, so, back in those days, they could swat you in school.
Right.
So if I got in a fight at school, I would get swatted and, suspension or whatever, and then my dad would get me when I got home. But corporal punishment, I remember getting swatted in school, and I think it did make an outcome.
Okay.
Change the outcome of my thinking, I guess, when it comes to school.
Okay. Do you feel like? Do you remember as a kid getting in a fight at school, getting your swatting, and then going home and mom and dad weren't there to support you, but to add some discipline, to add some training, I guess?
Yeah. Both my parents worked, so we were not latchkey kids, but we were home a lot by ourselves. And we had lots of adventures and got into a lot of trouble.
So you got to experience life as a kid.
Yeah.
Okay.
And at an early age, 12, I got my first motorcycle, and I would go off, around Holbrook and just ride. And it was good.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people are well, you had a motorcycle at 12, but I'm assuming Holbrook was the country in this sense?
Yeah, it's right off I-40. It's a nice place to fill up on gas. Right off the Indian reservation, the Navajo reservation.
Okay. Yeah, because growing up in the country, I feel like it's a whole different lifestyle.
Yes, it is.
You get to do different things before other people would experience them, and they're usually a little bit more on the danger adventure side.
Yes.
Right? But you get so much freedom and fresh air, and I miss living in the country. People tell me Arizona's the country out here, and I'm like, this isn't the country I'm used to.
Yeah, where we live right now is in young Arizona, up in the country, up in the mountains. It's about 20 degrees cooler than it is here in Phoenix. got a garden, got, you know, all the things.
Do you use some gardening for a mental health coping tool?
Absolutely. I mean, I grow my plants from seeds mostly, and just watch them sprout and help them survive. And then, you know, when they get big enough, it's very rewarding to harvest. And
Did you always grow food growing up, or grow plants growing up, or is it something you got into after the military?
I remember growing corn and alfalfa when I was a kid.
Okay.
And I don't really like farming too much, but you know, as a kid, you're like, what?
Did you have to bale the alfalfa?
Not really.
Lucky.
We just went. I was so young that we just went out and played in it, and
Okay.
you know, stomped it all down and hid from my parents or whatever.
Did you always know that you were going to join the Army after high school, or was it something in high school that triggered that?
I'm a patriot as far as my grandpa served. I didn't really know what he did or anything until I was older, but very patriotic. You know, I grew up watching Rambo and Red Dawn and movies like that where, you know, patriotism was something that we all had back in the 70s and 80s.
Right.
It's definitely different now growing up, but yeah, I knew I was gonna serve, and when I decided to join the Army, I was a broadcast engineer at Channel 3 here in Phoenix.
Okay.
And watching situations, like watching the news every day and everything, I could tell that there was a war coming or something bad was coming. And so we were doing a live feed into Baghdad, the CNN affiliate, and one of the main anchor women for CNN was, I can't say her name for liability issues.
Okay.
But she's completely bad-mouthing Americans. Very anti-American rhetoric, and they weren't on the air, so they were saying all this stuff, and it upset me that I wouldn't join the military like 2 weeks later.
Okay.
Just ready to serve my country. So, and then I wanted to go in as military intelligence. And they're like, oh, you might have to wait for your clearance. How about if you go blow stuff up and I'll give you a bonus? I'm like, sweet. So,
I got you.
so I was at 23 years old. I joined the military and went into short-range air defense. Basically a Stinger missile guy that I can shoot down airplanes and helicopters, but it didn't really translate into much of a civilian career.
Right.
But after a while, I switched over to military intelligence, and that's where I guess I made my mark.
Okay. How did you enjoy the military? How was the military to you overall?
I enjoyed it. I enlisted as a E1. Went up through the ranks. I made it up to Sergeant First Class, so E7. And then I got my commission as a warrant officer, and I was Chief Warrant Officer 2 when I got hit in Afghanistan and finally retired. But I had planned on serving 20 years, making a career out of it. So, and it's hard now because I was retired in 2012, and I was 37 at the time. And a lot of the people that stayed in that were in my same rank, they're retiring now at 20 years, and they, you know, obviously outranked what I was at the time. But I see them, and we have a lot of the same issues. But yeah, I wish I could have stayed a little longer.
Yeah, that's always, I feel like regardless if you get out on your own terms or if you get medically separated, right? Like it's always going to be hard eventually down the road because you're going to look back and think that grass was greener or whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. Me personally, I would struggle with the fact that I didn't deploy, I didn't see combat, right? And I thought I failed. So like as proud as I am to be a veteran and to be a Marine veteran, right? Like it's almost hard to talk about because I have that shame that I didn't do anything, right?
Right.
But at the end of the day, I had to reshift my focus and my thought process. And I'm telling myself my mission, or the reasoning I joined the military, wasn't to fight the war in Iraq or Afghanistan or anything like that. It was to fight the war once we're back home. And so that's exactly what I'm doing. And that's what brought you on this podcast today.
That's amazing. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, so
I totally understand where you're coming from though, because prior to my first tour in Iraq, 9/11 happened and I was in the chute to go to Kosovo, so I went to Kosovo. The rest of the 10th Fan Division went to Afghanistan, and so when I got back, I was, I didn't have a combat patch and all these 10th Fan guys who were, different than me. They were walking around with them, and I was like, oh man, that really gets me.
Yeah, and the culture in the military turned that if you didn't have that, you weren't shit. Like, you didn't rate, you didn't qualify, blah, X, Y, Z, right? So it was like shameful to not have it. So it made you want it even more. But that was just, sitting back here right now, it's like, that was your ego. That was their ego talking. Like, they're proud of that, which is great. You're proud of that. Like, I'm happy you got that experience and you came back from it, right? Wasn't in my cards.
Yeah, it's not in everyone's cards. And, I, by my 7th tour, you can only circle the flame so many times before you get burnt.
Right.
And I got hit with a mortar in Afghanistan on my 7th tour, so I'd circled the flame quite a few times, and I was ready to be done at that point.
Yeah. So you were still planning though to continue to your 20 years, and then you got hit, and then you're like, all right, this is the sign.
That's right.
Okay. Can you walk me through how that discharge went, how you handled it mentally and emotionally?
Okay. So, as a military intelligence officer, mental health is obviously huge, and no one talks about it. That's also something that doesn't happen.
Right.
So after all my deployments and everything, after my 3rd tour in Iraq, I was diagnosed with PTSD. At that time, they took a bunch of forms when you were coming back and doing reintegration. Well, did you see this? Yes. Did you fear for your life? Yes. So I honestly filled out this form. And I was with 10th Special Forces Group at the time. And so they came in and they're like, oh, you need to go see this doctor just from reading my form. And then I went back and talked to him, and I'm like, wait a minute, are you sleeping? No. Do you have anxiety? Yeah. And then he started talking about PTSD, and I'm like, well, I'm military intelligence. Like, we don't do that. That's my career right there. And so he just gave me some Ambien to sleep and some Valium and said, go back to Special Forces. They deal with their personnel, and we have our own thing over here. So I did that. 10th group really, they're like, that's not right. We use the same mental health facilities as everyone else. But so I was reassigned and medicated, and I was sent to Germany for a chance to stop deploying for a while, and got deployed 3 more times to Afghanistan because I was the only officer with a lot of combat experience at that point. So I had to suck it up for the team. I did some good stuff for the country. Bad for the body, but good for the country. Always put the mission first type of thing.
Right.
And eventually that came back to bite me. I was, burying feelings and things like that. So after I got hit, came back and talked to the psychiatrist finally, and that was the end of my career, basically. I had some chronic pain from a back issue and neck. So that was most of my disabilities from my back and neck, but my rating is for the max of PTSD, combat related PTSD. So getting out, it took about a year of just being in the medical battalion. They cut, my unit didn't know what to do with me, so they were like, all right, you're going to a warrior transition unit because you can't do your job anymore. That, oh, you're a piece of shit because you can't do your job. My last unit was my worst unit of my career. I mean, I got my 2 Bronze Stars downgraded. I got my combat action badge not done. My Purple Heart not done. So I got, and it was payback. I went toe to toe with a major as a W1 and won. And so those kind of a toxic leadership after that. But I was the only one that could get any targets killed or captured in any action done while I was in Afghanistan. So they would take my back injury, cauterize my nose so I couldn't feel it anymore, dope me up on Percocet or opiates, and send me back out. And so I was in Afghanistan carrying a weapon, taking 100 Percocet a month because that was mission essential.
Yeah, they needed you.
Yeah.
I want to ask you because, like, as soon as they found out, right, like when you first took that test, your unit didn't know yet, right?
No, it didn't.
And it sounded like the doctor tried to keep it from the unit, wanted you to go back and handle it, but
Yeah.
especially back then, that shit definitely wasn't talked about.
No, it
And
wasn't.
once it was talked about, I was under the impression that it was a career ender
It is.
because people didn't know, and people didn't want to talk about it, and people presumed you as weak, right?
Yeah.
But that's not the case.
That's
So
right.
that had to be a struggle on struggle, right? That had to be the cherry on the top.
Yes.
Yeah, so like your last command and they didn't treat you right, like
No.
that probably still resonates with you today because like you were, lack of better words, you were crying for help, you needed help, and they shamed you for that.
Yeah.
And that just makes things so much worse, and then they want to act like, oh, we don't know why this is happening or why they feel so bad. Well, look at the way you treat it and treat people who try to better themselves.
Yeah. Transitioning out of the military was one of the harder things that I've done in my life. Going from, a chief warrant officer where not a lot of people mess with you.
Yeah.
You have a lot of respect. Then you get disrespected, treated like you're, seeking drugs because you've been on these opiates forever, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, we're gonna take you off opiates. That'll kill a lot of people.
Right.
My doctor on the way out said, hey, you should try cannabis. I was given 5 years to live in 2011. They said I was taking 37 pills a day plus high levels of Oxycontin at the time. And I had to go through a detox in ICU for 8 days on ketamine to get me down to where 7 Percocet would have worked for me. And that was after 2 failed back surgeries. Neck, I wouldn't let them operate on my neck. They screwed my back up so much. So, my doctor on the way out of the military said, hey, you need to try cannabis. So I retired out of Germany, transitioned into Colorado back at where the Special Forces were that I went. I love Colorado, so I went back there. Their cannabis laws were just coming out in 2012. They were one of the more reasonable states, which I live in Arizona now, but at the time it was Colorado.
Okay.
So, it was a rough transition. I ended up going into financial debt just trying to maintain, buying a car and getting a house and all the things you got to do. And I'm coming from Germany, living out of a motel for a while. It's where all my entitlements and everything kicked in. So it was a rough time.
Yeah, that is rough. So, when you went through the detox, was that you were still in the military, or is that once you were out?
Well, I went through a heavy detox when I went in for back surgery, and while I was out, my ex at the time had power of attorney to detox me against my will.
Okay.
So I spent 8 days in ICU on a max dose of ketamine, undergoing two back surgeries. One, I had some PTSD complications in the ICU where I just had back surgery and came out and I was having some PTSD nightmares and things. And so they did what do they call it, stellagania block on me, where they jam the needle up your jugular. And they deaden your memory center with like a nerve block in your brain, basically.
I've never heard of that.
I've done 2 of those. First one I was in the ICU, and then the second one, I had to just hold still while they ran this thing up my jugular, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that again. It doesn't work anyways. So.
Wow. So, what was it like coming out of that then? Like you were forced to do something you didn't want to do. You were already getting out of the military, so that's a transition.
Yeah.
How were you feeling?
I was feeling pretty crappy. I was actually bordering on suicidal thoughts at one point.
With all that, I could imagine.
Yeah.
Like, don't have any shame in that.
No, I just tell people it happens. I mean, it just creeps in there.
Yeah.
And luckily, I had my dog there, and she came up and was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I was like, that was a stupid thought. Come here, dog. I'm playing with you for a while.
Okay, that's good.
But yeah, those thoughts come up.
Yeah, those intrusive thoughts, and they get dark, and if you feed into them, if you give them light, like they'll take over real quick. So something I actually just listened to today, I think on the way here, is that when you hear those intrusive thoughts, you counter it with a truthful statement.
Yeah.
So it's like you have a thought like you don't want to be here anymore. It's like, no, I love myself. I love my life. I love my dog, if that's what it is, right?
Yeah.
And then the more you speak the positive, the more those intrusive thoughts silence.
Yeah.
It's hard, especially when you feed them and you don't realize you feed them. Then you're just spiraling, and I feel the steam coming out of my ears from anger and that. So, how quickly after you got discharged were you in Colorado when you gave medicinal marijuana a chance?
Right away.
Okay.
I came out. I got my prescription right away, but I didn't know what to do with it.
Right.
I knew I wanted to use it, and I wanted to get off opiates all the way. And I was taking 37 pills a day, so I needed to get off all the muscle relaxers, all the painkillers, all that stuff. And cannabis is really, my blood pressure low. I'm much healthier. The brain affects the body too, so I've gone through a lot of therapy. Inpatient therapy for a month, outpatient therapy, intensive inpatient type stuff, and then I went through UCLA, Operation Mandate. It's part of the Wounded Warrior Project network.
I'm pretty sure I did that program, but I went to Boston and it was called Home Days.
Oh, okay.
So it was like 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, 3 weeks.
Yeah.
It's intense.
It is intense and it is very eye-opening.
Yes.
It taught you new tools, but the coolest part for me, one of the biggest tools I took away is art, right?
Yeah.
Because when we first got there, I think it was like day 2, we had to be in our groups and we went and did an art program. And the program is what made us all relate to one another. Whether we were chief warrant officers, we were PFCs, we were in 3 years, 20 years, still active reserve, whatever. 75% of us related to each other with however we painted on the painting, because we were talking about our feelings and our struggles and that. And we just painted the same way, whether it was being patriotic or something to do with the military, or a lot of people put red around their eyes for the bloodshed and the tears and the pain and all that. So it's a great program if you get the chance to do it.
Art therapy is huge. I don't know if you tried equine therapy.
During that program, we got to do a weekend with horses. So just a little bit, but you can definitely, we'll talk about that energy.
Yeah, horses pick up on negative energy. I was coming off of benzos at the time, going through the program, so I was really struggling. I'd been on Valium for 15 years, like 10 milligrams of Valium a day. So I've been off that for a few years now, off opiates for 10 plus years, alcohol 15 years. So
Congratulations.
Doing good now, but it's been a struggle.
I bet. But the best part is, like, life's always going to have struggles. It's going to be like that heartbeat, right, where it's ups and downs. Yeah. However, the more we work on our mental health and the more tools we learn, we're able to keep a stronger and more solid baseline. So the highs aren't so highs and the lows aren't so lows. But you mentioned that's a huge thing with like cannabis, right? It's very medicinal. It has a great medicinal value
yes,
to
it does.
But there's very few educational forms out there, and that's part of partnering up with Arizona Organix is that they're teaching during some of the classes like how to properly take the medicine and what to take for what, right? Because a lot of people don't know. So did you learn off of trial and error? Did you find a mentor?
I did a trial and error. Luckily I had an uncle that lived up in Denver, kind of took me under his wing, and it's explained a lot of the history and where the plant originated and the racial undertones that were into marijuana. I had no idea about.
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Marijuana itself, the name is a racially.
Oh, okay.
They just came up with the name. It was cannabis, and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna call it marijuana."
Okay.
And it was not. I mean, the whole reason that it's illegal is stupid in the first place. But politicians screwed it up, and it's gonna take some politicians to fix it, unfortunately.
Well, before we talk about this future politician fixing things, I want to talk about how or what you have learned works best for you with medicinal cannabis.
All right. Well, I started eating it.
Okay.
My wife at the time wouldn't allow me to smoke it, even though that's my preferred method these days. Started eating it. My uncle took me under his wing. He grew my plants for me, gave me the medicine, showed me how to use it, and under his tutelage, I learned the hard way a couple times. Taking too much.
Yeah.
But no one's died from cannabis ever. So,
right.
But I'm sure people have learned that. Whoa, that was way too much.
Yeah.
I learned the hard way. I was making capsules with it. That's how I was taking it at the time. I would take 10 drops per capsule, and then I took 7 capsules at a time, and then I wouldn't take opiates. So the VA made me choose between opiates and cannabis, and that was an easy choice for me, since opiates were killing me. So that's how I started using it in capsules, and then eventually started smoking. And I still use the best way my physician at the time told me to use it is take an edible in the morning, smoke, get up to level. When your edible kicks in, and then your smoking comes down, you get up to level, and then basically maintain that throughout the day. And that's how I operate.
Dude, where'd you find this physician?
Colorado. She was awesome. Colorado Springs.
Okay.
Early days.
Because I would love to figure out a proper program method to get off of my mental health medications and use cannabis or some other form of like healthy substances, like from the earth instead of like chemically made.
Yes.
It's just it's a little scary, honestly, right? Because there's no one at the VA that's going to tell me how to do it. Like, I don't even think I can get my VA doctor to tell me choose opiates or cannabis, right? Because he's going to say, here's just some opiates. What else can I get you?
Yeah, exactly. Well, since the VA is getting a little better about it, it's on my records. Hey, he's a cannabis user. He doesn't. I've had my prescription for cannabis since 2012.
Okay.
So I've been a medical user for so long. I injured my neck, a bulged a disc out, and it was so acute, I went into the VA, and they were just going to give me opiates, and I'm like, no, I don't want that crap. And so they're like, oh, well, here's a steroid shot instead.
Okay.
But tons of people that I know now, they'll use a tincture or a rub of some sort to get them through, so they don't have to take those opiates.
Okay. Do you feel, or have you been negatively affected from cannabis through the VA? Like, have they rejected you, didn't give you help, or?
No, I was 100%. I've been 100% disabled.
Okay.
So I didn't have to worry about my rating, Social Security rating, all that stuff. I'm disabled.
Right. No, it's not that you're not, right?
But there's no way they could come back and say, well, you're taking that.
Okay.
Maybe they can. But
right. It just hasn't happened.
It's the VA.
Yeah. So let's talk about your new opportunity.
Okay. So I'm running for Congress in District 2 here in Arizona. District 2 is about a third of the state. Goes from Flagstaff up to Utah or to New Mexico. Incorporates most of the Indian reservations in the state, and it even comes down to some of Florence and Coolidge closer to the valley. So we have a huge district. I'm obviously pro-cannabis. I'm independent, so I need to get, 3 times the amount of signatures to get on the ballot. But everywhere that we go, it's been really receptive with the veterans, really receptive with cannabis users and people in the community. It's medicine. It's a plant. I'm very pro plant-based medicine.
Okay.
And that's one of my main pillars of what I'm running on is cannabis regulation.
Okay, so I don't know how to ask this, but what's a policy you're trying to change, or something you're really pushing, or what are you going to provide District 2?
Okay, leadership.
Okay.
I have a lot of leadership, and I have a lot of experience. And the way I answer questions or present solving problems, I take all the information I can get. I get every angle, and then I make the best decision. That's how I did in the military, and that's how I will continue to. I'm not opposed to anything other than too much government. I am conservative, a little more not liberal when it comes to everyday. What would you call it? I'm independent. I'm right in the middle on pretty much everything.
Right. I feel like, correct me if you're wrong, right? I'll just talk about myself. For me, I feel like politically, there's certain things that I could choose from each group that I like, and then there's definitely certain things from each group that I don't like. And no disrespect to you, I feel like politics, especially if you're choosing one of the 2 major political parties, you're literally just choosing the lesser of the evil that you're willing to sin with, right? Because nobody's perfect. Mm-hmm. So how can I'm not trying
I can't, that's why I'm independent, because I can't adhere to everything in the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, so each of them have stuff that I'm not happy with, so I'm running as an independent, and I'll be there for the constituents. I'm not there to vote a party line or anything. I'm there to vote on what's ever best for my district.
Okay, and what led you to wanting to run for Congress?
I've always wanted to serve, and when they told me it was time for you to retire at 37, I've been retired for 12 years now, and that hurt. So I still think I can serve my country more, and my district, which I live in, and obviously I want the best for my district. That's my home. So that's my reason.
Okay. And how has it been so far on the campaign trail? When did you announce?
I announced officially on Veterans Day last year.
Okay.
So right after the election, when the incumbent won, and I was distraught that I didn't run in the last election.
Okay.
It was just a lot of gerrymandering, getting the districts exactly. We didn't even know where our district was. I thought I was running against a different guy, Paul Wilson.
Okay.
Until they redistricted, and now I'm running against Eli Crane. So, redistricting was an interesting thing. But gerrymandered, our district was definitely gerrymandered.
Okay. Yeah. So do you have any saved rounds or anything that I missed that you would like to talk about?
Well, I think my background with living in Arizona, growing up outside the reservations, I have a wealth of experience and common sense. I'm one of those officers that, warrant officers, they want bottom line up front. What's the important stuff? That's how I operate. Is this important? Yes. All right, we'll deal with this first. Prioritizing things, standing up for what's right. I was given 5 years to live, so I should have expired in 2016. So I'm still here, and I have a purpose, and I'm going to serve as long as I can. So.
That's awesome. You're still here. You're still going. And again, it happens to me every episode. I have something I want to ask, and it just goes right off the brain. But yeah, so how can people find you? How can we learn more?
All right, so my website is busbyforcongress.org. I'm on several podcasts, if you go to the website, I'll put this podcast up as well. But I have several other podcasts that I've done. One of those, I was a PDS one, and a friend I served with in Afghanistan, he saw it and he was like, "Hey, I've worked in Washington. We really need some good leaders in Congress right now. Have you ever thought of running?" So that's what kind of got the motor running, and then I was asked by several other people to run. And so last November, I announced. So next year, 2024, that's the big year. But
and you've been getting positive feedback?
Positive feedback. We're very active in the cannabis community. Everyone, they hear I'm running for Congress and they're like, yes. Someone who actually knows about the plant, who's going to make laws about the plant, so It just makes sense.
So that's like the cool part. This is what I wanted to say. The cool part about being a chief warrant officer is that you were enlisted first and then you went officer. So you have the street smarts and the book smarts in a sense.
Yes.
And now you're using that same methodology to become a congressional candidate by talking about, like, you have the experience in medicinal marijuana or medicinal cannabis, whatever you want to use, and then you're going to do good for it. Like, you're trying to do better for the people by using natural products instead of forcing us to do others. And I appreciate that. Like, you bring a fresh look because you have the street experiences.
Yes.
And then now you're bringing the book experiences on running for Congress and being in a position to use your tools that you have.
Yes.
So that's awesome.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you say book, and that's kind of how I got started. I wrote a couple books.
Okay.
I wrote my first one, Overcoming PTSD Through Fly Fishing. Actually, is one of my passions. And I wrote a book called Healing Waters about overcoming PTSD through outdoor recreation. And then I wrote a second book a couple years ago after I was going through a divorce, and it's basically a first year. It's the first year going through a divorce. So I was talking to someone when I was initially going through it, and she's like, "Wow, if you could capture what it's like, and that would be a good book," because finding out that a lot of people have been through divorce, these days. So that was my story. Obviously, that's how I got into doing podcasts and got my name out there. So I love fishing. I love the outdoors. We have a nonprofit where we take first responders, veterans, and trauma survivors up to the mountains, and we get them off the grid for a few days, take them fishing, I teach them how to tie flies, or we go gold panning, or just get off the grid for a while and connect with nature and heal in nature. That's one of our things we do.
That's awesome. Do you mind sharing what that nonprofit is?
Oh, it's called the Ashes Grove Foundation. Ashes Grove is the name of my second book. I'll explain that. So Ashley is the name of my daughter, Ashley Busby. She passed away in 2018 from suicide. And I've started the foundation. I found a piece of property up in Young, where I live, and that's the inspiration for the book. Just the story of how I found it and how I got it and what I'm using it for. It's an untouched grove of trees. I had 2.5 acres there, and it's right on a creek. It's gonna have a cabin. It's gonna have a stream section and a pond and fish and a tree house for a buddy of mine. A lot of people have gone into helping me acquire the piece of property, and it's just a huge. It's like a vortex, I guess you'd say. When you're on the property and you can feel that, like, I'll be having a crappy day and I'll go to the property because we live on the other side of town, but it's just a special place. And there's a special tree there. I call it a trauma tree. It's an old oak. It's been through. It's got knots and burls all over it, but it's a big, strong tree, and that's one of the central features of the property, and that's where I'm gonna put some of my daughter's ashes, and that's where Ashes Grove comes from.
That is an amazing story. I'm sorry you had to go through the loss and tragedy, but I'm glad that you were able to find the silver lining or turn such a trauma into such a positive thing. And now Ashley's living not only through you, but she's living through Ashley's Grove, and she's touching whoever comes to that property and helping them heal. So she made a sacrifice, but it's not left as a sacrifice. It's left that now you're helping the community, you're helping more people, and most importantly, you're helping yourself, because I can't imagine what you've gone through and what you continue to go through, because that's always going to be part of you and always with you, but you just get stronger over the time.
Yeah.
And I personally believe that you doing this in her honor, and that is going to help not only keep you two connected, but help you continue to get stronger and like work through this.
Yeah.
And I hope I didn't overstep or anything.
No, I love sharing stories about my daughter. She was an artist. I still have some of her artwork up in the house today. She left us with a lot. A kind soul, and she affects a lot of people still today.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you were already taking cannabis when she passed away.
Yes.
To help you grieve, cope, whatever it may be, did you lean heavier onto the cannabis, or how?
I think there's days, after it happened, I was living hour to hour, day to day. Everything was so rough. So there were definitely days where I consumed more cannabis than others. That's just how I handled with it. That's how I dealt with it. Not completely numb the body so you don't feel anything, but there's definitely sadness that you try to fill this over.
Yeah. So that's a good point, right? That like, if you take anything, whether it's cannabis, opiates, or what, you could fill a void, right?
Yeah.
But by filling that void, you're making it bigger. So the next day, the next week, you need to take more and more and more to fill it, right? So it's all about like balancing and finding the proper amount, right? Because like you said, you want to numb the pain. However, you don't want to numb until you're just a couch potato.
That's right.
But I think there is you got to find, it's different for everybody, right? But there's a perfect dosage of cannabis or any medicine that you want to take, right? That will numb the pain, but allow you to work through it as well. And I feel like, I take it back. I don't feel like there's any substance that works that I found or have been prescribed or drank, right?
Yeah.
That's been able to help me numb the pain, but talk about it, right? Because even before I knew what I was doing with cannabis, right, I was just trying cookies, like, oh shit, that looks 1,000 milligram cookie, that's cool, right? Like, that's the wrong way to approach it.
Yeah.
But I did notice that times that when I took it, and I didn't take a lot, I took a perfect dosage or amount, more like a lucky bite, right? Because you never knew what you're getting back then.
Yeah.
But I was able to not be sad about what I was going through, right? Like, I was going through a breakup, right? So the breakup didn't hurt me, and I was able to work out feelings that I had bottled up because of it. The only thing is, there's not a lot of therapists out there. I haven't found one yet that allows you to consume and then come in, right? The therapists that I have had that are okay with it, they don't want me to come in medicated. They want me to medicate, write down my feelings, thoughts, and processes, and then I bring it in and work it out, which works, but it takes away that ability to be vulnerable a little bit, because when you're medicated, you're able to be a little more vulnerable than you normally would be, because you're not worried about the judgment. Your ego's down. Like, you're just there to heal. And damn, I just want to fucking heal already.
Yeah. Well, processing is huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
So medicating to help you process is helpful. So, I mean, I still talk to doctors and therapists and stuff, and majority of doctors, medical doctors, are against it, actually. They're like, well, I don't want to talk to you when you're medicated. Well, I'm medicated 24/7, so you better talk to me.
Right.
But yeah, it's doing its work.
Yeah, that's good. So whatever doctors are out there that allow you to use medication, let me know, because I genuinely want to try it. I want to see if my theory that it works for me in the way I believe it will work, right?
Yeah.
Like, at the end of the day, you can have as much self-therapy as you want, but at a point you're going to get stuck and not know how to get past it or how to handle it or what. So it's always nice to have that extra unbiased viewpoint.
Yeah, and having friends that have been there.
Right.
Help guide you through. You need a guide or a shaman almost today to get you through things that, something that a pill is not going to help you.
Absolutely.
So.
Because I feel like a pill just will numb you and not allow you to deal with it.
Exactly.
And that's same with alcohol, right? You're just going to end up drinking too much. And
I was a walking zombie until I got on cannabis. I was on, like I said, 37 pills a day, high levels of opiates. It wasn't life.
Right.
So now I'm actually living.
That's amazing. And let's end it on that. Real quick, I want to give a special shout out to Aaron at the diligententertainment.net for filming this, and the video will be coming out next week, I believe. So look forward to that. And thank you to my sponsors, Total Roofing and Construction out of Illinois and Indiana. And thank you to Arizona Organix for having us use your space. Again, do you have any safe rounds? Anything I missed?
No, that's, I think you got me.
All right, Brady, I'm going to ask you to stand up and give me a hug to end the show.
All right.
That's how I do it. All right. Oh, shit. My bad.
All right.
Let's do this awkwardness. There you go. Thank you.